Hey, how are you? In this video, I want to talk about verbs again. The last dimension that we'll look at concerning the information that verbs can carry. Um, we're focusing on six. There may be more than six, but verbs are definitely the mules of the sentence. Of the clause. They do so much work, and it's very powerful word. Very important that we understand exactly how they can be used in languages. So we need to talk about aspect. Okay, we have the six facets of information of a verb are your person, number, voice. Okay, excuse me, person, number, time, voice, mood, and then aspect is your sixth one. Okay. Um, so what is aspect? Okay. Um, aspect is really as far as I know, right, aspect is a type of tense, okay? But it's not necessarily included under tense because it doesn't fit very well. I don't believe it fits very well with the category, the category labels that are already in play for tense, the past, present, future, um, perfect past, perfect present, perfect future. Now, we usually assert past perfect, present perfect, future perfect, but you have the simple layer of time movement, past, present, future. You have the complex layer because it's always in relation to two events. And this is your perfect tense, right? The past perfect, the present perfect, the future perfect. So you have these two layers, and they're quite balanced and sort of mirroring each other. Aspect comes in and really adds another facet to this facet for the past tense. Okay. But because aspect is going to get its own principal part, we'll talk about this later. Um, the languages that have aspect, the people that use aspect in their language this way through inflection, really kind of treat it as its own thing. So I guess I'm okay with aspect being its own separate dimension of information that a verb can carry, but it's kind of very specific. It's going to relate to the past tense of a verb. Okay, so the two, well, really there are three, but the two that I know the best aspects are the imperfect and the aorist. Okay, now there's another aspect called the middle aspect or the dual aspect. We'll talk about that one at the end, but let's talk about the imperfect aspect of the past. Okay, so if a verb is in its imperfect form with inflection, it's going to have its own special rules as to how to develop this. But it just means that the clause is talking about an event that has happened continually in the past and is still happening now, or potentially can still happen. For example, you can talk about you know some we constantly eat, we constantly breathe, we constantly uh, move. We now you might have habits of your hobbies, where you played golf or you bowled or you did some sort of sport or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But if you're looking at in your own past, you're going to find activities that you've done over and over and over again. And in fact, you might still be doing them now, and you might be continuing to do them in the future. Okay. Um, so we will call that imperfect because it has not been completed yet in terms of you moving past the repetition of that activity. Or it actually could be an activity that you started in the past and you are still doing now, a project or something like that. So um, the imperfect speaks to that sort of situation. And some cultures are going to privilege that sort of information. And what I mean by that is they're going to actively use it and convey it in their speech. They will make plenty of nuances of the type of events that have happened in their past. Some cultures do, some cultures don't. For those that do, many of them are going to have an imperfect form of the verb to say this type of action is habitual, this type of action might be ongoing, this type of action started in the past, and although it ended in the past, it started again in the past, and it might be even going on now because I'm still in the process of, et cetera, et cetera. So the imperfect just speaks to the ongoing nature of a past event, whether it's continually repeated or even something that is still being done by the speaker. Learning is like this. Okay, we might say, I learned the alphabet once, but I'm learning about life constantly. I have been learning about life. Now, that's how we would say it in English, because English will use modal words and just more words to convey these notions, to convey this information. But learning through life is an ongoing event. So a language like Greek or Latin might just be able to put that together in one word using the imperfect, inflections. So another aspect of the past that some cultures are really going to appreciate and use is now this is going to be tricky to explain for me. I've always kind of think through an explanation of this, and then 3 days later it's like, oh, I could have explained it better. I would suggest you look it up online, see what other people say about this. The aorist speaks to an event in the past that is singularly efficacious. Okay. In other words, something is going on in the life where this one event did the job. Okay. For that scenario. And that doesn't mean that this event is not going to show up again. It might show up again. But if it does, it's going to have a separate scenario where that one event was efficacious, did the job for whatever was meant there. Now, that's kind of vague. I know that. But I think the best metaphor to use here is a legal metaphor. Okay. If you are sued by someone and you're the defendant, okay, and if you don't settle, or if you don't take care of this before it goes to court, let's say you have to show up in court, okay, and you go through the court process and the judge makes a decision, right? If you've done no wrong, hopefully the decision is in your favor, okay? Well, whatever that decision is, it closes the case. You see what I'm saying? And for that particular case, you're done. Now, for the American system, you can appeal, but there's a point where the appeal process is going to stop, right? And then that whole thing is in the past as a one-time event, if you will. However, you realize 3 or 4 years later, you could be sued again. Maybe you need to stop these bad habits or something. And, you have to go back to court. You have to defend yourself. The judge rules, the jury rules, whatever. Whatever happens there is locked and closed, right? It's closed down for that one event. So there's a sense where that is aorist, right? Let's also look at, say, the growth of a child. There might be a point where the child learns how to walk, right? And that one point in time might be considered by some cultures as aoristic. That just happened once where they stopped crawling, but they're walking ever since, right? And so it would be helpful for you to really get a handle on this, to go and look at examples of aorist tense, aspect, and to see if you can actually find aorist examples in English. Because if it's deep grammar, remember, if it's deep grammar, then the standard rules can change as far as capitalization, punctuation of a language. The contemporary grammar expressions can change in terms of, what type of inflections we're using and all of that. But the essential need to convey information about reality for beings who live in the world with space and time and displacement, that never changes. So if aorist is indeed a human need for expressing experience, then you're going to find aorist aspect in English. Okay, so see if you can find some of those examples and come up with some really good ones on your own. The third aspect is the middle aspect or the dual aspect. This is for activity in the past that was brought about by the subject and the object of the verb. We haven't talked about objects yet. We've talked about subjects, but not objects. But the point is, sometimes a culture might look at an event where you had a subject, a verb, and then the subject was doing something to an object, like John taught Jerry. Right? I hate these simple explanations, but I just come up with them. I mean, examples, right? They're always John and Jerry or something. Anyway, John taught Jerry. But someone might say, well, John, is not really going to be an effective teacher unless Jerry is an effective student. So this event was actually brought about by both acting in accordance with the other, right? With kind of with the verb, right? John did teach Jerry, but only because Jerry had some more sort of had a say in it too. There was an attitude or something Jerry had to do to be receptive to John's teaching. Okay, I think among adults in a non-required situation where someone is trying to teach someone else something, but there's no penalty for not learning it, like a failed class or lost money, then that definitely is a dual activity there, because so many times it's just hard to teach someone else something if they don't want to learn it. So that would be the dual aspect. And again, it's these things are essential to the human experience, but there will be some cultures in some eras of time and some geographic situations where it is more prominent or more important because of their version of law or because of their version of warfare, or I don't know, but sometimes these aspects will be stressed more in certain languages than in others. But I do believe that aspect is present in all languages, everywhere, at any time, because it's more of a human need concerning our experience. It shows up on that level, right? So that's why I would include it in the deep grammar. So far, 6 dimensions to the verb: person, number, tense, or time, right? Voice, mood, and aspect. Thank you so much for watching.